Welcome to a journey through myth, where gods and heroes walk side by side under timeless skies. Tonight we speak of Zeus, the Thunderer, ruler of Olympus, and father to many children of destiny. His power shaped the heavens, yet his legacy touched earth through heroes born of divine and mortal bond. From Perseus, the clever slayer of shadows, to Heracles, the strong heart who carried great burdens of fate. Their stories are not only about feats, but about courage, choices, and the path each hero had to walk. Zeus gave them life, but their journeys were carved by trials, hope, and lessons for all who listen today. These myths are more than ancient words. They are mirrors of human struggle and the quest for meaning. They show us how even children of gods must endure hardships, yet shine with virtue and resilience. In each tale we find not battles of blood, but echoes of wisdom, endurance, and the spirit of humanity. So let us step into the world of Olympus and beyond, where the father of heroes still whispers through time. Zeus sat upon the high throne of Olympus, watching the world beneath with eyes both kind and stern. He was the master of thunder, the keeper of law, and the guardian of order across heaven and earth. His presence filled the skies with light. His voice echoed in storms. Yet his heart often turned to mankind, for Zeus was not only a ruler of gods, but also a father who linked immortality with mortal destiny. The ancients told stories of his mighty power, yet also of his moments of care and guidance for mortals. Through him, the bond between the divine and the human was woven into the fabric of myth forever. Zeus was the bridge, uniting the eternal majesty of Olympus with the fragile hopes of mortal hearts. He gave life to children whose spirits carried the flame of courage, shaping the legends we still recall. Each child bore a spark of the sky, a piece of Zeus's thunder. Yet they also carried human struggles. It is in this union that the heroes arose, standing between heaven's might and earth's quiet endurance. The world of men was filled with hardship, fear, and mystery, yet also with beauty and strength of will. Zeus looked upon this world and saw the need for examples, figures who could light the path for others. So came forth heroes, not perfect, not without burden, but radiant with the chance to teach and inspire. The role of Zeus as a father was not simply one of birth, but of destiny shaped by divine intention. His children were not given easy lives, for they had to walk through trials to show their true essence. This was the gift and the challenge, to prove that greatness comes not from blood, but from choice. Zeus's fatherhood was thus both gentle and firm, a reminder that life itself is shaped by tests of spirit. Perseus, Heracles, and many others stood as examples of courage, wit, strength, and enduring hope. Each carried within them the imprint of Zeus, yet each told a different story of human possibility. In their triumphs and stumbles, we find mirrors of our own struggles and the victories of the heart. To call Zeus the father of heroes is to see him not only as a king, but as a guide through mythic time. He placed within his children the seeds of resilience, asking them to grow in the light of hardship. The myths are not tales of thunder striking the earth, but lessons of endurance carried in mortal hands. For even as Zeus held lightning, his children carried the spark of wisdom, courage, and gentle strength. The father of gods became a father of ideals, giving humanity figures who could live between two worlds. When we listen to these myths, we hear not only the voice of Zeus, but the footsteps of his children. They remind us that even when storms gather, there is a light that guides us through shadow and doubt. In Perseus, we see cleverness. In Heracles, we see patience. In others, we see justice or beauty's power. Together, they form a tapestry woven by Zeus, a gift of stories to teach humanity what it means to live. And so, we begin this journey with Zeus himself, whose throne on Olympus still overlooks our imagination. Far below the shining halls of Olympus, there lived a king named Acrisius, ruler of Argos. Proud, yet fearful, he longed for a son to inherit his throne. But the oracle warned that fate had other plans for his line. The prophecy declared his daughter Danae would bear a child, and that child would change destiny forever. Acrisius trembled at these words, for prophecy in Greece was a voice no king could silence or ignore. In fear, he built a chamber of bronze, sealed with stone and iron, where sunlight barely touched the floor. Here Danae lived, hidden away, guarded by walls meant to deny fate and silence the voice of prophecy. But destiny is not held by chains, nor can walls resist the will of heaven or the touch of the divine. Zeus looked down from Olympus and saw the young woman, radiant in sorrow, yet glowing with quiet hope. Her beauty was like dawn breaking through mist, and her heart carried a gentleness that reached the sky. The king of gods descended not in thunder, nor with fire, but in a vision of golden rain from the heavens. The rain fell softly, shimmering light filling the chamber, a moment of wonder untouched by fear or pain. Within this golden blessing, life was planted, and Danae felt the stir of destiny within her gentle heart. From this union would come Perseus, a child born not of chains or fear, but of hope and divine promise. The myths tell us not of cruelty, but of the mystery of Zeus shaping mortal life with symbols of wonder. For golden rain was not mere treasure, but a sign of divine favor, falling like sunlight upon human sorrow. Danae, once a prisoner of her father's fear, became the mother of a hero who would walk into legend. Her chamber of bronze, built to confine her, became the cradle of a child destined for deeds of light. Zeus, as father, did not break walls or command armies. He entered quietly, in beauty and brilliance. Perseus was born under a sky of mystery, carrying within him the spark of Olympus and the heart of man. From his earliest days, whispers of fate surrounded him, yet he was nurtured in love and quiet strength. Danae held her son with hope, knowing that though the path was unknown, destiny had already awakened. Perseus's birth is not only a tale of divine descent, but of resilience rising even where hope seemed lost. Zeus, the father of heroes, set in motion a story that would stretch far beyond Argos and its fearful king. For every hero begins not in triumph, but in a moment where light touches darkness and changes its shape. In Perseus, we see that birth itself can be a miracle, a union of divine vision and human endurance. The child born of golden rain carried no sword in hand, only the promise that courage would find him. And in time, Perseus would grow to become not only a hero of myth, but a symbol of destiny fulfilled. Thus began his story, not with thunder, but with a quiet gift from Zeus, shining in the stillness of bronze. And so, from the heart of Argos, in secret and in silence, the first great child of Zeus entered the world. Perseus grew from a child of mystery into a youth marked by quiet strength and a bright, steady gaze. Danae raised him with care, teaching him kindness, patience, and the courage to face each passing day. Though born of Zeus, Perseus knew not luxury, but the life of one watched by fate's silent whisper. When the time came, the world called him to a task that would shape his name and test his spirit. The king Polydectes, cunning and proud, sought to rid himself of Perseus through a challenge of doom. He demanded a gift unlike any other, the head of Medusa, a creature feared across the known lands. Many thought Perseus doomed, for who could face such a being and live to tell the tale afterward? Yet Zeus, the father of heroes, did not leave his son without guidance or divine strength to endure. Athena, goddess of wisdom, came to his side, carrying the polished shield that shone like a silver moon. Hermes, swift messenger of the gods, offered him sandals with wings to carry him across sea and sky. A shining sword was placed in his hand, light and true, a gift to cut through shadow and fear alike. The nymphs of the north bestowed a pouch to hold what no mortal eyes should ever dare to behold. Each gift was more than a tool. Each was a symbol of wisdom, speed, courage, and divine protection. Perseus accepted them not with pride, but with humility, knowing the path ahead was not his alone. The shield was not a weapon of war, but a mirror to see truth without being caught by deadly illusion. The sandals were not for flight alone, but for freedom, lifting him beyond the limits of mortal reach. The sword was not for destruction, but for justice, to cut away fear and clear the way for light. Even the pouch was a reminder that power must be hidden, held with respect, not flaunted for glory. Thus prepared, Perseus set out not as a warrior drunk with might, but as a seeker armed with faith. The journey across the seas was long, yet the gifts of the gods bore him onward like a guiding hand. He walked through strange lands, saw mountains touch the heavens, and rivers winding like threads of fate. Each step carried him closer to the shadow of Medusa, yet also deeper into the heart of his destiny. The tale tells us not of violence, but of wisdom. To face the unknown, one must see with clear eyes. For the shield's reflection was more than a trick. It was a lesson that truth can be found indirectly. The sandals reminded him that speed and agility are often stronger than brute force or heavy strength. The sword showed him that courage, guided by purpose, can cut through fear more surely than anger. And the pouch, held close, whispered of responsibility, that even victory must be carried with humility. Perseus walked on, guided not by rage, but by the quiet knowledge that the gods trusted him to succeed. He was not alone, for every gift was a sign that Olympus itself stood beside him in his trial. Zeus, his father, had planted within him the seed of courage, now watered by wisdom and divine aid. So the young hero stepped toward his task, not to prove himself, but to fulfill the path laid before him. And in this we see the essence of Perseus, not simply a slayer, but a hero shaped by grace and faith. The gifts he carried would one day shine in legend, but they began as symbols of hope, trust, and light. And thus, with shield, sword, sandals, and pouch, Perseus set forth, a child of Zeus and a beacon of men. Perseus carried the gifts of the gods with steady resolve, stepping into the path marked by destiny's hand. His heart was not filled with arrogance, but with the quiet awareness that his journey served a greater good. Through mountains, deserts, and seas, he traveled with the wind at his back and purpose in his stride. At last, the time came to face the shadow that had haunted the dreams of mortals for countless years. Medusa, the Gorgon, dwelled in silence, a figure of dread whose gaze could turn life into still stone. But this tale need not dwell on fear, for Perseus' victory lay not in strength, but in wisdom and light. He raised the polished shield, shining like a moonlit mirror, and looked only through its reflection. Step by step he approached, guided not by sight, but by courage, trust, and the echo of divine aid. The winged sandals carried him with swiftness, lifting his spirit above the weight of fear's shadow. The sword gleamed like dawn-breaking night, a promise that even darkness could be parted by clarity. And with one swift act, the trial ended, the danger passed, and Perseus held his fate within the pouch. The hero turned not with pride, but with humility, knowing this moment was a gift of gods and his own will. Perseus then journeyed onward, his task complete, yet destiny had many more chapters for him to walk. On his return, he found the maiden Andromeda, bound not by cruelty of chains, but by despair of fate. Her people faced ruin, and she was offered to the sea's darkness, a symbol of sacrifice and sorrow. Perseus, moved by compassion, used the gifts of the gods not for glory, but to bring light to her life. He freed her with courage and kindness, showing that true heroism is not conquest, but service. Together they walked back toward hope, their paths now joined, guided by love born of gratitude. Perseus returned not as a conqueror, but as a savior, carrying both wisdom and newfound joy. When he reached home, the shadow of Polydectes no longer loomed, for the hero had proven himself. The people saw in Perseus not only a man of deeds, but a bridge between divine favor and mortal strength. He became a founder of dynasties, a king whose lineage would weave into the fabric of Greek memory. The children of Perseus and Andromeda carried forward the spark of Zeus, shaping kingdoms and legends. Thus, the story of Perseus was not an end, but a beginning, rippling outward through time and history. His legacy was not the slaying of monsters, but the light he brought to his people and to generations. Zeus, as father, had given him life, but Perseus shaped his own story through choices of honor and grace. The gifts of the gods faded into legend, but the lessons of Perseus endured in the hearts of humanity. He showed that wisdom can triumph where fear dwells, and kindness can bring peace where despair lingers. His journey was one of courage, balanced by humility, strength guided by compassion, and divine wisdom. In Perseus, we see a hero who lived not for himself, but for the greater good of those around him. And so his tale endures, not with the clash of steel, but with the quiet strength of a life well lived. Perseus, the son of Zeus, stands in memory as the bright beginning of a line of heroes born for light. In the city of Thebes, a woman of noble heart lived. Her name was Alcmene, praised for beauty and virtue. Her spirit was gentle, yet her strength was deep. A daughter of Perseus's line, carrying the light of heroes. Alcmene was loved by all who knew her, for she was wise, kind, and faithful to her husband Amphitryon. But destiny stirred, for Zeus, father of gods, watched from Olympus with eyes fixed upon mortal affairs. He saw in Alcmene not only beauty, but the promise of a child who would shape the fate of humanity. Zeus descended not in thunder, but cloaked in mystery, as he often did when guiding mortal destiny. The night was calm, the stars shone bright, and in their stillness, a new thread of fate was woven. From this union, a son was conceived, one who would carry the strength of Zeus within mortal form. That child was Heracles, whose name would one day echo across mountains, seas, and the hearts of men. At his birth, the heavens stirred with signs, for even nature seemed to know a great soul had arrived. The infant cried with power, his voice carrying the spark of Olympus and the breath of human hope. Alcmene looked upon her son with awe, for she felt that his life would be marked by trials and greatness. Her love was fierce, her care unwavering, though she knew destiny had placed a heavy burden upon him. From the first, Heracles was unlike other children, for strength and vigor burned within his young limbs. But more than strength, he carried a heart of warmth, laughter, and an innocence untouched by fear. Zeus, though distant in his throne, kept watch, for this son was to be more than a figure of might. He was to be a teacher of humanity, a guide who would show that struggle can forge wisdom and hope. The people whispered of omens, of a child chosen by the gods, blessed, yet destined for endless trials. Even as he grew, his presence inspired awe, for he seemed both man and something more than man. His footsteps were heavy with power, yet his eyes held kindness, a balance rare in mortal lives. Heracles was born into a world that expected much, yet he carried the burden with quiet grace. He did not seek glory for himself, but his very being promised that great deeds would one day be told. The ancients say his birth was a gift not only to Greece, but to all who seek courage in hardship. For in Heracles, Zeus gave the world an image of resilience, carved from both divine and mortal clay. His childhood was filled with moments of wonder, where even small acts hinted at the greatness within. Yet even in play, he showed restraint, for his heart leaned toward fairness, never toward cruelty. Alcmene guided him gently, reminding him that strength must serve justice, not pride or ambition. Thus the boy grew, a child of two worlds, carrying the light of Olympus within a mortal frame of flesh. Zeus, father of heroes, knew the path ahead would not be easy, but such was the way of all true legends. Heracles' story began not with triumph, but with a birth wrapped in love, mystery, and silent prophecy. And so, the child of Zeus lay cradled in Thebes, unaware of the weight of history resting upon him. He was not yet the mighty hero, not yet the bearer of labors, but simply a child blessed by heaven. In his small hands rested the promise of courage, in his gentle eyes the reflection of divine purpose. And from that night onward, the world would wait and watch, for a son of Zeus had entered the earth. Heracles grew quickly, his childhood filled with wonders that showed his spirit was touched by Olympus. He learned to walk with steady steps, his laughter ringing like music that brightened the halls of Thebes. His strength was great even as a boy, but it was guided by a gentle heart shaped by his mother's care. Alcmene taught him patience, kindness, and the wisdom to see strength as a gift to protect, not to harm. As he grew, mentors came to guide him, each offering lessons to shape his body, mind, and soul. Chiron, the wise centaur, taught him the art of music, the healing of herbs, and the beauty of poetry. Others trained him in the bow, the sword, the chariot, and the ways of kingship and noble duty. Yet Heracles shone most when he learned compassion, for his heart was as mighty as his growing frame. He cared for friends, honored elders, and showed respect to the gods with offerings and prayers. The people of Thebes spoke often of him, a youth unlike any other, both humble and extraordinary. Even as a child, he displayed a sense of fairness, standing firm against cruelty or injustice he saw. But destiny always follows the children of Zeus, and signs appeared that his life would not be simple. Oracles whispered of trials that would come, tests of spirit that no ordinary man could hope to endure. The stars above told of journeys, of burdens that would one day rest upon Heracles' strong shoulders. Yet in those early years, he knew only joy, the warmth of family, and the promise of bright mornings. He played in fields, raced the wind, and laughed with friends, never weighed down by shadows of fate. Zeus watched from Olympus, proud yet silent, knowing his son's future was written in threads of struggle. For heroes are not made in comfort, but in the fire of trials, in the shaping hand of destiny. Heracles would be tested not only in strength, but in patience, kindness, and endurance of the soul. Still, as a boy, he lived in brightness, learning harmony before life brought storms upon his path. The gods themselves sent small signs, guiding his growth with gifts of wisdom hidden in daily lessons. When he failed, he rose again. When he erred, he learned, showing a spirit resilient beyond his years. His hands grew strong enough to bend wood, but they also cradled small creatures with gentleness. His voice could command attention, yet he spoke often with humility, never seeking to boast of himself. It was this balance that made him beloved, both feared for his power and cherished for his heart. Teachers marveled at his memory, his ability to listen, and the calm resolve he carried in every task. Though some whispered envy, most felt awe, for they knew Heracles would not live an ordinary life. Every step he took seemed marked by destiny, each choice preparing him for challenges yet unseen. Still, his childhood was not about burdens, but about light, forming the foundation of his future story. The people who watched him grow felt they were witnessing the rising of a star destined to guide them. And though storms would one day come, the boy Heracles remained a beacon of hope in Thebes, for he carried within him the living bond between heaven and earth, Zeus and mankind, God and mortal. This was the seed of his greatness, not in force alone, but in the harmony of power and compassion. Thus his early years were remembered as a time of peace before the long road of trials began. And in those moments of innocence, Heracles shone not as a warrior, but as a child of promise. As the years passed, Heracles grew into a man whose strength was spoken of across valleys and seas. His shoulders bore the weight of tasks with ease, yet his heart remained tied to justice and to mercy. Thebes rejoiced in him, for they saw in Heracles a guardian, a protector of people and of sacred law. He trained with warriors, hunted in forests, and learned the ways of kings, yet never lost his humility. Though gifted with power, he treated others with fairness, knowing true strength is guided by virtue. Zeus watched with pride, for his son was becoming the hero he had always intended to walk the earth. But destiny has a way of stirring storms, and soon Heracles would be drawn into trials of great weight. It began not with war or conflict, but with the whispers of fate calling him to serve beyond himself. The oracles spoke of a path, a road of labor, a series of tasks that would define Heracles for all time. 12 trials, each vast and daunting, set not to break him, but to reveal the depth of his spirit. Yet before those trials, Heracles lived moments of peace, of marriage, and of quiet happiness. He loved his family, cherished his home, and sought nothing more than harmony in his daily life. But harmony is rare for those touched by Olympus, and soon shadows stirred against his bright days. Even so, Heracles carried within him the strength to endure, a gift of both Zeus and mortal resilience. The people of Thebes looked upon him as a leader, for he did not rule with pride but with compassion. He raised altars to the gods, honored traditions, and lived as a bridge between heaven and earth. Everywhere he went, stories grew, of hunts where beasts fled, of contests where none could match him, Yet he never boasted of these deeds, for he valued kindness more than the fleeting glory of applause. This balance made him beloved, a hero not only in power, but in the light of his character and deeds. Still, whispers from Olympus told of trials waiting, tasks woven into the fabric of his very destiny. For even the strongest must be tested, and Heracles was chosen to carry burdens no other could bear. The path of labors would not be cruel for cruelty's sake, but a crucible to shape greatness eternal. Zeus himself knew the weight of fate, for his children often bore trials meant to guide all humanity. Heracles would soon step into such a journey, one that would test both body and the depth of his soul. Yet at that moment, he remained a figure of hope, a man of strength and laughter, loved by many. Thebes flourished in his presence, for his courage was a shield, and his wisdom a gentle guiding flame. Even kings of distant lands spoke of him, curious of the son of Zeus whose fame crossed the seas. But fame was not his aim. Heracles sought only to live with honor, to protect, to serve, and to love. It was this purity that made him worthy, not the size of his strength or the power of his arms. And so the stage was set, the days of peace fading as destiny prepared to call Heracles to his trials. The world held its breath, for the boy of promise had become a man, ready to step into legend. Each dawn rose brighter, yet beneath the light lingered the quiet hum of fate drawing near. For soon the name Heracles would echo beyond Thebes, beyond Greece, and into eternity itself. And though challenges loomed, his story remained one of light, a beacon to guide all who listened. Thus ended his youth of peace, as the first steps toward his labors stirred in the winds of destiny. The day came when Heracles was called to stand before King Eurystheus of Tiryns, a ruler bound by fate. The oracle had spoken, and Heracles was commanded to serve, to prove himself through trials unimagined. Eurystheus, though king, feared the might of Zeus's son, and so he sought to humble him with labors. 12 tasks were set, each more daunting than the last, designed not only to test, but to break. Yet Heracles accepted with calm resolve, for he knew destiny had chosen this road as his own. The first trial was to face the Nemean lion, a beast said to be invincible to any mortal weapon. Heracles set forth with courage, not anger, guided by wisdom more than sheer force of strength. He studied the land, listened to the people, and sought to understand the nature of the creature. What others feared, he approached with patience, for heroes triumph not by rage, but by knowledge. Through cunning, he overcame the challenge, showing the world that will and wit can tame despair. The lion was not simply a beast, but a symbol of fear, and Heracles brought light to that darkness. From then, tales of his labor spread, inspiring awe and hope in hearts across Greece. The second labor led him to the Hydra, a creature of many heads, reborn with every strike. Here, Heracles showed perseverance, proving that no trial is endless if one endures with wisdom. He did not face the Hydra alone, but with aid, reminding us that even heroes need helping hands. Each trial was a lesson, not merely a feat, shaping Heracles into more than a warrior of strength. He learned humility when others helped, patience when tasks seemed endless, and faith in the gods. The third labor brought him to capture the Ceryneian hind, swift and sacred to Artemis herself. This was no battle, but a test of restraint, for Heracles pursued the hind without cruelty or haste. He showed reverence to the goddess, honoring divine will while completing the tasks set upon him. In this, Heracles revealed that true greatness lies not in conquest, but in respect and harmony. The fourth trial was the Erymanthian boar, fierce and wild upon snowy mountains. Heracles endured the cold, the storms, and the endless chase, never faltering in his purpose. When at last he brought the beast alive, he showed the world that persistence shapes victory. So it went, labor after labor, each unique, each demanding more than mere muscle or might. From cleaning the stables of Ogyges to capturing the Cretan bull, every task carried a lesson. Heracles faced rivers, mountains, wild beasts, and endless obstacles with unwavering spirit. The trials revealed not only his strength, but his ability to adapt, to think, and to endure. What seemed impossible became possible, because Heracles never surrendered to despair. Zeus looked on with pride, for his son was becoming the hero destined to guide mankind. Through hardship, Heracles grew in wisdom, his name spreading as a symbol of resilience. He was no longer simply the son of Zeus, but the embodiment of courage and perseverance. Each trial tested not only his body but his soul, forging him into a beacon for mortals. The labors were long, yet Heracles endured, proving that even the hardest burdens can be carried. In him, people saw hope, that no darkness was too deep, no challenge too great to be faced, and though the tasks were set to humble, they instead raised him higher in the hearts of all. The labors became not punishment, but the foundation of a legacy that would outlast time. Thus, with each step, Heracles walked deeper into legend, his story bound forever to the stars. Heracles' name echoed across lands. But even the strongest hearts must face trials of spirit and soul. Beyond his 12 labors, there were journeys that tested not only his might, but his deepest humanity. One such journey led him to the far west, where the golden apples of the Hesperides lay guarded. These apples were not mere fruit, but gifts of immortality, treasures tied to the will of the gods. To find them, Heracles wandered through deserts, mountains, and seas. Guided by whispers of destiny, he sought counsel from wise seers, for knowledge often lit the path more clearly than strength alone. On this journey, he met Prometheus, the Titan chained for defying Zeus and aiding mankind. Heracles freed him from torment, showing mercy and justice even in the face of divine punishment. This act revealed a truth. A hero is not only defined by conquest, but by compassion and empathy. When at last Heracles reached the garden of the Hesperides, he faced a challenge unlike the rest. Atlas, the Titan who bore the heavens, offered aid, but with cunning and careful words exchanged. Heracles carried the sky upon his shoulders, feeling the burden of eternity pressing upon him. Yet, even here, he did not falter, proving that true strength is the will to endure the impossible. Through wisdom, he secured the apples and returned them, not for his own gain, but for his trial. This labor became a lesson, that immortality is not the prize, but the legacy one leaves behind. Heracles' journeys also brought him across seas, where he battled storms and wrestled with fate. He crossed paths with kings and strangers alike, learning humility as often as he showed power. In these wanderings, he discovered that the greatest victories were not of body, but of spirit. Once, he was tasked to bring back Cerberus, the hound of Hades, guardian of the underworld. Unlike beasts of earth, Cerberus was no mere challenge, but a bridge to the realm of death itself. Heracles descended, fearless, yet respectful of the powers that ruled the shadows of existence. He did not slay the beast, for that was not his mission, but to guide it without harm to the surface. This trial taught mortals that even death can be faced with dignity, and not with despair. In every step, Heracles carried the weight of his divine blood and mortal soul together. He was not without flaws, for even heroes falter, but his courage lit the way through darkness. Zeus watched, not as a distant god, but as a father who saw his son embrace destiny with honor. The trials beyond the 12 labors revealed a truth more enduring than all victories. They showed that heroism is not measured in strength, but in resilience, mercy, and purpose. Heracles, though mighty, was still mortal, and his path was never free of suffering or burden. Yet, it was in his ability to rise again, to keep walking, that his story became immortal. The people of Greece looked to him not as flawless, but as a symbol of enduring hope. Through him, they saw that hardship was not the end, but the forge of greatness. His legacy spread not only through temples and tales, but through the hearts of those he inspired. Heracles' journey was far from over, but by now, his place in legend was already sealed in eternity. As Heracles' story neared its final chapters, the weight of his mortal and divine nature grew heavier. He had conquered labors, endured journeys, and stood against trials beyond the measure of any man. Yet even the son of Zeus could not escape the threads of fate, woven tightly by the Moirai. His final trials were not battles of beasts or quests across distant lands. but struggles of the soul. Heracles faced betrayal, grief, and choices that tested the very core of his humanity. It was said that his heart, though mighty, bore scars deeper than any wound of the body. In one tale, he received a garment, seemingly a gift, but laced with hidden pain and poison. Though myths speak differently, the essence remained. It was not strength, but endurance he must show. The fire that consumed him was not of destruction, but of transformation and release. For Heracles was destined not to end as mortal, but to ascend into the realm of the divine. As the flames rose, so too did his spirit, lifted beyond suffering, beyond the reach of sorrow. Zeus, watching from Olympus, saw the courage and sacrifice that defined his son's final moments. He claimed Heracles not as a mortal, but as a god, granting him a place among the immortals. There, Heracles was freed from pain, crowned with glory, and welcomed by the gods themselves. He was given honor, a seat in Olympus, and a life everlasting beyond the trials of men. This was not an ending of despair, but a beginning, a rebirth into eternal legacy. Heracles' journey reminds us that greatness is not found in avoiding suffering, but in rising through it. His tale closes not with silence, but with the thunderous applause of history and memory. The Greeks looked to him as the bridge between mortal and divine, a guide for all who struggled. For in Heracles, they saw their own hardships mirrored, and their own hopes lifted toward the stars. The constellations still bear his form, shining in the night sky as an eternal reminder. He became more than a hero. He became a symbol of endurance, courage, and transformation. Zeus, father of heroes, saw in him the fulfillment of destiny, a light for generations to come. Heracles' story teaches that no burden is carried in vain, for each trial shapes the eternal soul. Though the flames ended his mortal life, they lit the path toward his everlasting place in legend. In Olympus, Heracles found peace, yet his spirit remained in every tale told by mortals. Every hardship faced by men carried a whisper of his story, urging them never to give up. His labors, his journeys, and his final ascent became lessons passed down through ages. Heracles' name became eternal, not only for his might, but for the resilience of his heart. He stood as proof that even suffering can be transformed into greatness and immortality. Thus ended the mortal path of Heracles, but began his divine journey in the halls of Olympus, a son of Zeus, a friend of mankind, and forever a beacon of courage in the face of fate.